Cool. Hey, Alexis here. So I'm the designer on product planning within Plan. Hopefully y'all know, but just to reintroduce myself. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of the work we were doing on the product planning UX workshop, UX roadmap workshop. Um, and this is very, very work in progress. So kind of high level, talking about some of my process going through this and just like thoughts as I'm still documenting a lot of this work. So first of all, what is this? We were going through a UX roadmap workshop with Andy and Justin as part of an OKR around capturing some of this work, thinking more strategically as a UX team org, kind of being less tactical, bringing some of this user focus into the roadmap or the product roadmap as well. So within this workshop, I think it was an hour and a half or 2 hours with my new PM who is now onboarding and my old interim PM, not old, just, past PM. We went through this mural board that Andy and Justin set up for us. Just really high level. We kind of thought of like our goals, what our ideal states would be. And then we pulled in issues from basically our backlog that were direction items in our kind of our category of maturity epics, and put these on this board and then clustered them, did some kind of affinity mapping, thinking of the high level themes of all these groupings. And like I said, this is all very work in progress. So we just really high level bucketed each of these and talked through it. And I think this was really valuable to me. This is one of my favorite parts of this is talking with the PMs about all of these goals we're going after, why, what are the strategies behind each of these. And then I went through and kind of did little mini groupings as well here. But this is what we worked on together, and thinking about how these tied back to our jobs to be done as well. And then we pulled these into kind of a refinement of thinking of these themes from more of a business perspective. So what are the business objectives of these? This is what I still need to work on with my PM. Like I said, it's really timely. She is ramping up on product planning. So it's been, I think, a really great experience working through this with her, thinking of these objectives from her perspective as well, and kind of refining these and almost like not resetting, but like, level setting some of our goals as a team. So we're going to go through this, thinking about the confidence we have in this theme from a UX perspective. Like, has it been researched? Do we have thoughts there? Is it really important to the users? Are we confident there? And then thinking, like I said, what are the business objectives? Like, do we want to increase share of market? Like, how do we measure success of this from a business perspective? And then plotting these out, I guess by milestone is the way we would think about it, but like, ranking these in priority. We have these buckets of kind of quarter, right? Like next couple milestones, and then maybe ones that we weren't really sure about yet. We don't need to prioritize at this moment. We are thinking we'll probably go through, as I said here, like the RICE models. So thinking about, reach, impact, things like that, as well as the confidence we have in each of these. So that was, this. This was the workshop. We got probably to here, and we have, like I said, work in progress. We have more to do. I'm going to work on this with my PM, and then I want to pull the rest of the team in as well. Just my thoughts on this. So we got here, we were synthesizing. Now I need to create also, once we've really solidified these themes, I need to create some issues around it. For me, it's always easier sometimes if I'm creating many issues, just create an Excel doc and then upload it in. So here, Andy had a UX theme template, so I just pasted that into each cell. And again, this is really work in progress, so I'll just talk about it really high level. But for me, I was creating these themes. So creating UX theme issues. And I think the goal is to then pull all these UX themes into one shared board and really understand where our work overlaps, across stages, and maybe any dependencies, anything we can help each other with. I think that's great. Some things I'm thinking about, and I want to talk through it with my PM as well, is like, what is the best way to document this? We have what we're thinking now, which is, put this on a shared board. Some of the things I'm thinking about here, though, is keeping these items up to date. So, for example, I'm sorry that I'm pulling up Gina. This is a great documentation here. But within each issue, we have kind of like a mini, almost like a Kanban board itself. Like we have the weight, the status. Something I'm thinking about is it ever going to be difficult to keep these items up to date? Or is there like a more low effort way of keeping these items up to date? And then also, for example, for me, we just have so many issues. So how to capture all this work in a sensible way that's not duplicating issues, or like a lot of effort here as well. So for example, you have these issue links. Some ideas I had here, I thought of like a million different ways to do this in like the long term of how we might visualize some of this work. Some things I played around with, and again, very work in progress, like I said, is maybe lifting these themes up into epics and then capturing some of this information here about the overall theme, but moving these into either the implementation issues or like different issues that kind of bucket the work. So for example, I have this kind of design management theme, and I pulled this kind of smaller themes here and created issues out of those themselves to kind of bucket them and put them as like design issues within this larger epic theme. And then there you could create documentation like here. You could just move this over onto this issue itself. So I can see the status. I can see, when we're targeting the date, the labels, things like that. I can also maybe make the research effort itself into its own kind of epic here. And then you can view that on the roadmap and view completion, things like that there. So it's kind of pulling some of this information into here to make it a little more trackable, but I'm not sure. Something I'm just playing with. And then I'm thinking about how to apply this within like a Kanban or like, within the board itself. And how I might work on this with my PM. One way I'm thinking we could do that is to, again, like pull those larger themes of epics into an epic board, have that plotted out by, again, the quarter, like, the iteration cycles that we want to work with, and then allow us to drill down. So like maybe if this theme is upcoming, then we drill down even further into it and bring it into something like the issue board. So maybe I see all my, my next couple of releases, and then I'm really drilling down into those bucket of, issues within the theme. And I'm seeing how those move through a workflow. So again, kind of pulling some of this information into a board itself. So that's something I'm playing with, and like I said, work in progress. I'm kind of going to work through some of these questions and ideas I have with my PM, but I also want to make sure I'm consistent and pulling this into the shared board with the team so we can play around with this pilot first, because I think this is an amazing idea. But that's just some things I'm working on. And then also, level setting with my PM on some of the questions I have, and kind of working through some of these, because we had some questions around like the category maturity and like the the product roadmap itself versus our UX roadmap. How do we kind of reconcile the two? Because ideally, I would not want it to be implementation versus like user focus roadmap. I would ideally like those to be kind of the same thing and allow that to be one single source of truth for us to kind of drill down into. That's like literally what I guess my team is building. So maybe we're lacking there at the moment. But yeah, I just had some questions here. And then some like tactical things. Like it's hard sometimes for us to really flat out this work when we have like Epic stealing children from each other. Some of the strangeness about around dates showing up on roadmaps, things like that. So it's cool for me thinking about this. It's very meta. It's like stuff my team wants to work on in general anyway. But yeah, high level, some things I'm thinking about. Like I said, still work in progress. I'll let y'all know where I get. But overall, this is a really fun workshop, and I really appreciated being able to work on this, especially with my PM who is onboarding, and it started a lot of great conversation between us and how we think about our team and you know, how we want to prioritize, and especially things like UX stat, things like that. So it's been awesome. Anyone have any questions? I'll stop sharing so we can talk.
I had the first one. Okay. Yeah, I had one because I saw that you had a ton of stickies, a ton of issues to deal with, like in the beginning when bundling the themes together. I was wondering, you kind of already spoke to this, but I was wondering how that impacted how you went about creating the themes, because I think the goal is that the theme would be taken on in a single like milestone set. So yeah, I just wanted to learn more about how you went about that.
So can you reiterate your question? So I had a lot of stickies, yes, that I bundled together. How did I create the themes from all of those, that large bundle of work? Is that your question?
Yeah, like how did you go about, because there's so many that you had to group together. So yeah, how did you do it?
Yeah, good question. I'll share my screen again. So for example, yeah, like I said, I'm still work in progress. Amanda, my newer PM, and I are going to keep working on this. And I think based on the documentation that Justin and Andy created and some of the information around roadmaps, we might have to break some of these down, right? For now, these are just the large themes. And then we kind of went through and created smaller buckets within these, like maybe sub themes or just different ways to group these. So they might have to be broken apart because we, you know, like you said, we want to keep it to a smaller time box and then kind of ranking these themselves as well. So it might just be more themes or sub themes within the theme that we then prioritize, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I see myself falling into a similar situation with Runner whenever we end up doing it for Runner, because we have so many issues. So that's why I was trying to understand better so we could use like similar practices there.
Yeah, the subgroupings have been helpful for me. Tactically, we'll see, right, what happens there. But like grouping that in ways that make sense has been good. And that's how I think, like, let's say I was going to put all this work in an epic, that's probably how I would do it. Like, what work within this larger theme of work would I work on together? How would that make sense to deliver value? And honestly, going through this, another thing I didn't talk about was this has been really helpful in refining issues as well, because we just have so many issues. So going through all these, making sure everything's captured in this mural board, I went through like a million issues, and some were like old, out of date, I closed, consolidated, moved. So that's been helpful too. You might notice that as you work through this.
Alexis, I had some advice on tracking and keeping things up to date. Don't try it. You'll spend more time doing that than you will doing the design, right? So I linked to an example in like a weird Figma file that I kind of keep on how this process should go. But to explain it better, if you could share your screen again and go back to that design management theme, it can kind of explain what we were getting at. Is if you see here on the left where it says manage discussion visibility, there's an issue that says convert a regular comment to an internal note. But up and to the right, you say add context to or discuss designs. Like if we were going to design these, we should be designing these things contextually at the same time for the span, so that all of these stickies here are really just requirements for you to keep in mind as you're evolving the collaboration of designs workflow. Because the MVCs that were broken down prior to us actually doing any of the work, right? So we've already kind of broken our design process prior to even starting. So we're designing in these small silos and microscopic views of these features, not really understanding the pure connection between them. So by breaking down those like microscopic silos that we created within our silos and our silos, then we can see, oh, this is the entirety of the workflow. I'll just design this. And the MVCs are broken down from there, which can be put into the issues that they already exist, or issues for planning breakdown can be created. So, you know, an example, show design discussions and comments view, but then you have another one talking about converting comments into an internal note. Those things are probably going to be happening near to the experience in which you want to be designing them. So we were just saying the intent is to design these things at once. If it's really big, then chunking it down makes sense. But chunking it down into an MVC before we start designing puts us into a tough spot, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. I think what I meant by keeping up to date was items like this. I think personally, I find it difficult to manage like tables like this. For me personally, things get out of date really quickly because I just create tons of documentation. It's a personal problem. But so I was thinking about how to, you know, lift those statuses up further. So, you know, I took those small buckets and then broke them apart where you could track the status in like a first class way, if that makes sense. So then you're not having to edit that issue. But I think also what you're saying is kind of zoom out here and maybe not be so granular about tracking each thing, which I think makes sense. Maybe on the implementation issues themselves, which again brings up a bucket of worms that I'm not going to talk through how to reconcile the two. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, engineering has their own way of tracking, right? And I think that's what we tried to do with the organization in GitLab is to separate anything from the needs of tracking on the UX side for the needs of tracking on the engineering side, right? So essentially your themes are ready for design, ready for problem validation, in design. And all the issues within them are all ready for design or in design, right? Or have yet been defined, so problem validation.
Yep, I like it. It's like slicing those few workflow states within the larger stage board. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a big paradigm shift, so we're all going through it. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, but I'll let y'all know, or like everyone know. I mean, it's something my PM and I are talking through, like, because we do want to use the product roadmap as a single source of truth, because you know, as a cross-functional team, I would like to like make these themes more visible on the product roadmap itself. But anyway, we're going to keep working through it. Blair, did you have any questions really fast, and then we'll move on?
In the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and just make them read only. One of them in particular for the UXR team anyways. But that was a great presentation. I'm going to stop recording now